Hi, folks. This is Emily with American Resiliency. In today's video, I am so excited to welcome back Ash, who has contributed wonderful teachings to our community on building heat resilience, building fire resilience, and now we're talking about wind and hail. Thanks so much for joining us, Ash.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me back.
I am a person who has been impacted by derecho type events.
Mhm.
And this first image that you're showing here is extremely familiar to me and my community. We have been, some folks are still working to rebuild from this 2020 event. There's still people who are working on roof repair. So,
Mhm.
thinking about preparing for the next big storm with this sort of extreme weather being a serious threat across most of the country in the climate projections feels very timely to have this teaching from you in the spring.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be back with you. Wind is not something that happens a whole lot out here. So I actually needed to give myself a bit of a refresher before doing this with you, but I think it's really important to know. And so much of it can be applied to different types of resilience, like earthquake resilience and flood resilience is also something that some of these loads can impact. And so it's good to kind of have an understanding of how our houses are held together.
Oh, that's really interesting. I'll let you take it from here. I look forward
Okay,
to learning from you.
sure. So today we're going to be discussing preparing your home for storm events. In particular, I wanted to talk about strong winds and hail. In the future, I might do a presentation on water and flooding, but that's a really huge topic, so I think it needs its own video.
I would definitely agree.
So there are three types of windstorms that everyone should know their risk for. The first is derechos, like you just mentioned. These are straight line windstorms. And for a storm to be categorized as a derecho, the wind has to be greater than 58 miles an hour along most points of the storm path. But gusts in some of these storms have been estimated to be up to 130 miles an hour. So these can be exceptionally strong.
They're like being in a straight line hurricane when you're in a bad one.
I'm impressed with everybody who lives in wind country because wind scares the heck out of me. So you guys have stronger spirits than I do for that kind of stuff. The second one is tornadoes, and I'm sure that most folks are aware if they're in Tornado Alley, but it has been expanding to the east. And I wanted your clarification on this. Is Tornado Alley actually shifting or is it just expanding where it's been happening? Do you know?
It does look like it's shifting. If we look
It's
at trends
shifting.
over the
Okay.
last few years, it does seem like there's eastward movement where the
Mhm.
western side of tornado country is seeing slightly fewer of them. And we are looking at fairly conserved projections from what info we have that more tornadoes are moving kind of into the Ohio and Pennsylvania area. And if you don't
Interesting.
have a tornado culture where people know how to respond to the threat, where people have shelters, they're much more dangerous than areas that have tornado culture.
Right. So tornadoes, I think everybody's aware of what a tornado is, but they give you rotating winds, and the strongest ones can get up to 300 miles an hour. And there's really no way to design for a 300 mile an hour wind apart from building your whole house underground. But fortunately, those tornadoes are very rare. A majority of tornadoes have wind speeds less than 110 miles an hour, which is something that we can prepare for.
When you're talking about the difference between a derecho and a
Mhm.
derecho, you're going to have those very high winds over a large area. The
Right.
tornado, it's like a finger or a path of destruction that can be
Mhm.
really intense, but is more confined.
Yeah. And then the third type is hurricanes. Good news for the people along the Gulf Coast. They're already probably really aware of how to be resilient for hurricanes and they're old pros. But you've described hurricane paths that are shifting in the modeling, and it seems like we have seen that in recent years. So I want to recommend that people further inland and up the Atlantic coast start preparing the way that the same people in the Gulf Coast would.
Unfortunately, we do see that conserved inland hurricane track that Helene kind of followed,
Mhm.
potentially moving all the way up into Virginia. It's not inconceivable. You could have a full strength Cat 1 hurricane hit DC under the climate modeling, which
That's
that would be
wild.
very disturbing. That
It
area is
would.
not prepared for hurricanes.
Right. So I wanted to show everybody this map. This is a wind map from the International Residential Code. So it's in my great big thick code book, and it's what the minimum wind speed that the homes in your area are currently built to. So all of the new homes around you, this is what they're going to be built to withstand. And there's not going to be There will be a few builders that build beyond code, but there's not very many unless their client specifically demands it. So you'll notice that in the middle of the country, where all of the derechos and tornadoes are, those are all built for wind speeds of 90 miles an hour. Older homes might not even be built to that. And so if you're worried about wind events, we're going to take our cues from South Florida, which is an area built to withstand much larger wind speeds. Now we're going to talk a little bit about hail. Hailstorms are formed when raindrops are carried up by updrafts and thunderstorms into extremely cold areas of the atmosphere and freeze. Then hailstones continue to grow by colliding with liquid water drops that freeze onto the hailstone surface. The most common hail area in the US is where Nebraska, Colorado, and Wyoming meet, and this area averages 7 to 9 hail days each year. An important thing to know about hail is the larger it is, the faster it's going to fall. For inch hailstones that are pretty common in severe thunderstorms, the expected fall speed is between 25 and 40 miles an hour. But for 2 to 4 inch hail, the expected fall speed is faster, often around 70 miles an hour. There's lots of variables that can affect the fall speed, like shape and wind conditions, but it's important to know that the larger they are, the faster they're going to impact. And climate change is projected to make hail larger over much of the US because of the stronger updrafts caused by warmer weather.
That's a great damage photo. I have seen that kind of damage on siding in my area as we're seeing more convective storms. And I think it's important to note for people who are interested in climate and the insurance market that this damage photo is really revealing a lot of what insurance companies are hating paying for with convective storms is siding damage.
So we'll talk a little bit about improvements. For wind, some of the main things we'll look at is roofing and openings. We want to make sure that your roof is able to withstand the uplift forces during strong winds, and the openings like garage doors are able to withstand the forces of strong winds. We're also going to take a look around us at landscaping and accessory structures to make sure that those are safe and secure. For hail, we're going to discuss impact resistance of different materials. This is also helpful for windstorms in general. Debris carried by wind is incredibly dangerous. So impact resistance is a huge benefit, not just during hail, but for all types of windstorms.
I like that sort of community-minded emphasis that if stuff is flying off of your house, it is potentially causing hazards to other homes.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about safe rooms. Safe rooms are sometimes referred to as storm shelters. They are hardened structures designed to provide near absolute protection, and this is FEMA's words, near absolute protection, during really extreme wind events. I think that for a lot of us who aren't in a windy part of the country, having a storm shelter seems like a really unrealistic goal. You might think of bunkers like this one, but there's a really great guide by FEMA on how to construct your own using simple materials like concrete block and rebar. And these can often be built inside your house or inside your garage. There's also pre-built safe room kits that you can find online. This is what an actual safe room would look like. And this is the goal, that even if everything around it falls apart, you're going to be safe inside, protected. So if you're in an area where storms can form quickly or unexpectedly, you might not have time to evacuate. So a safe room can be used to keep your family protected. And here's some information from FEMA document P320 for when and where you should consider building a safe room. This map shows areas of high wind hazard. The areas in orange and red are where they recommend having a safe room. If you already have a basement with reinforced concrete walls, adding a safe room to the corner is probably going to be your most inexpensive retrofit. If you're in an area that occasionally floods or could be hit by storm surge, you'll need to build above ground instead, because you definitely don't want water getting in there when your family's in there. Safe rooms don't have to be empty rooms just taking up space. I've seen lots of people use them as closets or storage rooms. Just make sure that there's enough clear space to be able to use them quickly in an emergency.
It's not uncommon for a safe room to be finished and look very normal in parts of the Midwest, or for part of the basement to already be particularly reinforced for use as a safe room. So as we're talking about it, this sounds like kind of a scary next level thing, but it's just a closet with thick walls that hopefully is in your basement. And if not, you're using it already for storage space. The biggest problem that people have with these rooms that are already built is that they put too many holiday decorations in them.
Yeah, mine would be filled with canned goods.
Snack while you're waiting. That's awesome.
Here's a few helpful guides that FEMA's put together if you want more information on designing a safe room. So let's talk about the rest of your house. If you're planning on re-roofing your house soon, there's a few upgrades you can make that will help it weather storms better. First, your sheathing. Sheathing is usually going to be OSB or plywood unless your home is quite a bit older, but how it's nailed to the trusses below it really matters. In a lot of the country, nails through the sheathing and into the truss is going to be every 12 inches. But instead, in windy areas, you really want to space your nails every 4 inches and make sure you're using 8D nails. Next is your weather barrier. In a lot of areas, the default is going to be roofing felt, which works great. But if your shingles are damaged, it can rip and blow off, and then the water is going to be getting into your home below. So a peel and stick membrane is going to adhere fully to the sheathing below it. You can see this guy installing it here. And it's going to keep your house dry as long as the sheathing is intact, which is why we nailed it down really aggressively. Roofing materials are a little bit tricky. If you don't mind having some occasional dents from storm debris and you've got money to invest, steel roofing is hands down the most wind resistant. But if you're on a budget and you don't mind a little bit of DIY action up on your roof after a storm, most asphalt shingles are not great, but they're at least really easy to replace.
What about vinyl? I see a lot of people in my area installing vinyl roofs. What do you think? Where does that fall on this spectrum?
I would have to look more into the material that you're talking about. If it's like a bitumen roof that's like a peel and stick, that's going to stay down pretty well. Some of it is nailed in. Do you know how they're attaching it?
I've seen people doing it, but I just don't have a great impression. Maybe we'll
Okay.
get some people in the comments who have more vinyl roof information. And this is an area where if it is being installed more often, maybe we could get some more information to put in the video description.
Yeah, that would be great.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. I also wanted to let people know that shingles are rated. So if you use a class 4 shingle, they've got the best impact resistance. They actually fire hail at these things in a testing laboratory to see how many holes are going to get poked in them. There's also another rating for wind, and it's under the ASTM D7158 testing. And these are going to be rated in letters. So if you use class H shingles, they have been tested to resist wind uplift at 150 miles an hour.
Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's pretty decent for an asphalt shingle. Something to know is that you need to nail them in according to this picture down here. 6 nails per shingle, right in the nailing zone. Don't use staples, use nails. Really, really tack those things on. Whoops.
It's good info for anyone who's doing this DIY. Thank you, Ash.
Yeah. Now we're going to start working on our roof structure. So gables are those little upper triangular walls on the ends of your home. They're almost always the first point of failure from wind, as you can see here. I've seen lots of pictures like this after hurricanes. There's not usually much holding gable ends onto houses if they aren't built to very high wind standards. And fast winds can push or pull those gable end walls to the point where they separate from the rectangular wall below, like you can see happen in that picture. The first thing to check when you're looking at your gable is your gable overhang framing. They've found that the most frequent building failure in hurricanes is due to a weak gable overhang connection. When this fails, the roof sheathing and the gable end wall usually also fail. Ladder framing is the most common method for framing gable overhangs throughout the country. So do you see how it looks like a little ladder has been just tacked onto the outside of the wall right there? That's what we
Yeah.
do.
And what's different in the next page is that there's another board going down the middle of the ladder, right?
Yep.
Okay.
It's strapping it in further in through the roof. So this one only has one point of connection and it's just kind of cantilevered out. Like there's not a whole lot holding it on there except for a few nails. This one, it's going to be nailed down here and here. And so it's a lot more secure. So
Makes sense.
this is called outrigger framing, and it's what we want to see on our houses. My house has this kind of framing. And if you do have that kind of framing, there is something you can do about it. You can strengthen it. The Florida Division of Emergency Management has a wonderful handout on ways to do this. It's this link right here. And we can put that in the description too for people if they want it.
That would be great. I have a maybe dumb question.
Mhm.
If you're looking at this from the outside and you don't know how your house was built, wouldn't the ladder and the outrigger kind of look the same?
From the outside, yes. If you go into your attic, hopefully you've got an attic, you're going to be able to see these from inside your attic
Okay.
coming back into the house.
So if you're trying to check for this, just to reiterate, outside you're not going to be able to tell. You got to
Mhm.
look from inside the roof to tell if you've got ladder or outrigger structure. Cool.
Correct. Yeah. And for the next step, we're going to be going up into your attic anyways. So you can do a whole bunch of checking here and there and seeing what your structure looks like.
Nice.
Yes. And again, thank you, Florida, for doing all the testing and having all the documents. If you've got this document open, also look, they've got a section on strengthening this connection here between the gable wall and the rectangular wall below it. A lot of times, this triangular gable wall is just relying on gravity and a couple nails to keep it connected. So, adding some straps in between these two is going to do a great deal to keep your gable where it should be. So, again, this document right here, thank you, Florida.
We'll get that in the video description for sure.
So while you are up in your attic, the next spot we're going to check is the roof structure where your trusses tie into the top of your walls. So there are a variety of metal straps, clips, and brackets that are called hurricane ties that are engineered to keep your trusses strapped down to the wall. And fortunately, in a lot of the country in newer construction, these are already widely used. So you're up in your attic. First, we're going to check the insulation while we're up there, and then we can also check the ladder framing, see what it looks like up there. But we also want to check right at where your rafters or your trusses are meeting up at the top of your walls. So hopefully you should see little metal clips that look something like this or like this screwed into every single rafter or every single truss. You're only going to be able to see the top part. The bottom part right here is probably going to be covered by your ceiling drywall, and you might have to pull back the insulation a little bit in order to see these. If you don't see these, it used to be a really difficult retrofit, but now Simpson makes the HGA-10, which is this little clip that you can actually retrofit really easily. You just screw it in from the top of the plate.
Sweet.
Yeah, I know, it's wonderful. Make sure to install these with the screws that the manufacturer recommends. I'm pretty guilty sometimes of when I'm in the middle of a project, I just fish through my garage for whatever I've got on hand. Don't do that. Go buy the screws that they recommend for this. Make sure that you're holding everything down really tight.
So you don't have to take apart your attic or nothing.
You
You
don't have
can.
to undo your dry. Yeah, before you'd have to rip down your ceiling drywall to get it in here, and now you don't have to do that. So thank you, Simpson.
This is a very conceivably manageable retrofit to have the whole gable wall not fall off your house.
Yeah,
This is
well, these
really
are
cool.
for this is for the roof flying off. This is when you see those pictures
Even
in after a
better.
hurricane where it's just it can be a big umbrella sometimes and just poop. So yeah, no, this will keep your roof tied down really nicely.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for sharing this information.
Yeah. So now that our roof is looking good, let's talk about siding. The biggest job of siding is to protect the structure underneath it. So for some of these materials, they might get dented up or look poorly after a storm, but they are going to be sturdy enough to keep water from penetrating your wall and rotting it out. So they're doing their job. With siding, one of the things you can look for is if it's approved for high velocity hurricane zone areas. So look for HVHZ. Not many sidings have ratings for these areas, so if it does, it's going to be able to protect your home through some pretty severe weather. Masonry is a good option for impact resistance. You don't want the thin veneer stuff, but traditional 3.5-inch brick that you find on older homes is wonderful. Fiber cement is good. Some brands are HVHZ approved. They can have a very high wind rating, but their impact resistance can be slightly less than some of these others. So if you're more worried about hail than wind, if you're in Hail Alley and you don't get a whole lot of windstorms, just be aware of that. Reinforced steel siding is a great material. It can be dented, but it doesn't shatter. It's going to stick around forever and protect your house. And it's also very wind resistant and recyclable. So we like that. Engineered wood is another option. It's a little bit more flexible, so it's got more impact resistance than fiber cement does. Wind speed rating is a little bit less. And if you're in an area that might be looking at wildfires, it's not Class A fire rated. So just be aware of that.
I think it's really interesting to note how many of these materials give you impact resistance and fire resistance. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking at an all hazards type upgrade, these are good things to be thinking about. And I wanted to get your opinion also. As we've gone through the big derecho repair in our area and we've had these more intense hailstorms, there has been a lot of experimentation to try and figure out what is going to work. And I've seen a lot of people putting in stucco because even if the stucco gets a bunch of holes in it, you can patch it. So at
Mhm.
least it doesn't look terrible forever, like shattered siding. What do you think about that? About like a repairable material or adobe, a more natural earth material? What's your take on those factors?
I love the idea of a repairable material. Stucco in particular makes me a little bit nervous.
Okay.
Um,
No, I
so
want to hear.
yeah, okay. So modern day stucco is not vapor permeable. If water gets behind the stucco, it's going to stay in your wall. And a lot of times,
Exciting. Exciting implications for that one. Okay.
yeah, so stucco needs to be detailed and installed very carefully. There needs to be really careful flashing at every single window and door and down at the bottom. And there needs to be control joints and there needs to be weep screeds so that if water gets behind it, water's always going to get behind a siding material. Water finds its way everywhere. So you need it to be able to drain very well. We've actually had a problem here in the valley of there are some people who install stucco that are not very good at it and don't know how to do this. And so about half the projects I've been working on recently are from homes that have been severely damaged by their stucco installation, and the walls underneath start rotting if the water can't get out.
This is the sort of high risk situation that I think is very valuable to spread through the community of people who are doing these improvements themselves.
Mhm.
I will share this information and tell people that if that's the approach they want to take, they need to be really careful.
They need to really understand where all of the flashing needs to happen and how the water is going to make its way out of the walls. You know that I've been doing some experiments on natural plasters, natural
Yeah.
exterior plasters. Those are vapor permeable. So if water gets inside the wall, it can just dry to the outside. There's no concrete or plastic keeping it trapped up against the wall. It can just kind of breathe. So that's a little bit different, and I can't recommend it yet because it's only been one season since I installed it. I want to make sure it's going to last, but I am
So is this the
experimenting.
hempcrete or the
This is
cob
the
experiment?
Yeah, this is the hempcrete, and it's a hempcrete plaster, so it's not fluffy like hempcrete. I put some clay and extra lime in it and really smushed it down, but we'll see how it lasts. I'll let you know.
Fingers crossed. I look forward to hearing about that one. And thanks
Yeah.
for your patience with this diversion here.
Oh, no worries. Another thing I wanted to bring up really briefly is reinforced vinyl. So you saw that picture of the hail damage where the vinyl had all the holes in it. There are some types of vinyl that the core of it's going to be filled. So it's a lot stronger. And some of it can be rated for wind speeds up to 110 to 130 miles an hour. So it's much stronger than your normal vinyl. It's also going to be more expensive than your normal vinyl. But of these options, I think it's probably one of the cheaper things to
It's
use.
good to see that there are options other
Yeah.
than building a giant brick wall around your house, which is always a great option.
Yeah, it's tempting. It is.
Okay.
And whatever siding you use, like you were talking about, the repairability is important. If you're handy, try to learn how to repair it yourself and have a little bit extra. All right, so doors and windows. If you're already in the market to replace your doors and windows and have extra budget, you can find some brands that are rated for HVAC areas. Again, that's the testing for hurricanes that they use in South Florida. They are made with thick laminated glass and they've got reinforced frames and upgraded hardware, but they're expensive. If you can't afford to replace your doors and windows, let's be honest, most of us can't right now. Think about repairing them and then adding protection. And by repairing, I mean going around the perimeter of each one and inspecting them and sealing any gaps or cracks you see with a waterproof sealant.
Could you just use caulk? Could you just use like silicone caulk?
Yeah, yes, you can. And there's different
Cool.
versions. So really, when you're at the hardware store, kind of look at the different versions of caulk and see what they're made for. You don't want to use the wrong one. But yeah, there's silicone caulk is a good one. So let's talk about protection, window protection. And we're going to start off with shutters. Make sure that what you buy is wind rated. There are lots of decorative shutters out there that are not going to do a darn thing. Also, install it according to the directions so that it doesn't get ripped off and turned into another projectile in a storm. That's the opposite of what we want. Think about if you want them to be dual use. If you get something like Bahama shutters, you could use these for blocking the hot sun in the summer, or if you get rolling shutters, they could be used for security if you're away from your house. Storm panels are another option for protecting your windows, and they're going to be a lot cheaper. You can find them in polycarbonate or steel pre-made, or you can make your own out of OSB or plywood. They're going to require some time to get into place and installed when a storm is coming. You're going to need to go outside and screw them in. So they're great for hurricanes, but they're less so for sudden severe storms. And I wanted to add this just as a heads up. Many people refer to the screen doors that have glass panels in them as storm doors. These are not designed for any kind of standards for wind protection. So if you like adding a screen door or a glass door to the outside of your home for extra light or fresh air, that's fine. But I would not spend money on one and think that it's actually going to help you during a severe storm. You're probably just going to have more glass to clean up at the end of the storm. So it's not going to help.
That's a good heads up. And I like the idea of, again, thinking about a multi-purpose, all hazards type approach. Those Bahama type shutters would be really nice for being able to control how much light got into the house during the hot part of the day.
Yeah, on the west or south side of a house, that's going to keep a lot of the hot sun out during the summer.
Cool.
All right, garage doors. They are a huge weak point in your home. Post-storm investigations have revealed that more than 90% of house damage from wind events begins when garage doors collapse.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, once wind gets into your garage, it's inside your home. It's kind of breached that shell of your home and it's going to do a lot of damage.
That's like on par with the fire destruction from embers getting in, and then the damage comes from inside the home. I did not know we were talking about a 90% garage door destruction cascade.
Yeah, yeah. So reinforcing your garage doors is really critical. First option, the most expensive option, is replacing it. There are impact and wind resistant versions of garage doors. There's going to be a white or yellow sticker that lists pounds per square foot. And you might think that that sounds kind of complicated to know what you need, but there are tables out there that show you, depending on how wide, so there's a single and a double, how wide your garage door is, what your exposure, what wind speed you're looking at. You're going to go through this table and figure out how many pounds per square foot your garage door needs to be rated for. So figure out the
Awesome.
wind speed you want to prepare for and then pick a door. The second option, you can install ready to install storm kits with struts and braces on the garage door that look something like this. Once you put the braces on, you can't open your door again until you take them off. So they're a good option for a storm with an advanced forecast, like a hurricane or a bigger summer thunderstorm that you can tell is going to happen, well in advance.
How long do they take to get on and off? Because it's unclear to me if this is even an option when you're talking about a derecho or a thunderstorm. If they take an hour to get on, that's not going to
Right.
do it.
I have not installed them before. I would guess that once you've done it a couple times, you can probably get them on in 15 minutes. But if you're also going around to all your windows and trying to screw plywood in and doing this, that's a lot to think about before a storm.
Yeah, this seems probably more like a hurricane
Mhm.
type threat. Other wind events, you're just SOL. You better replace that thing if you're really concerned.
Yeah, I would recommend usually replacing.
Okay.
And then the third option is building a temporary 2x4 wood brace. And this is something that, again, you're not going to be able to open your garage door while it's on, but it's cheap. You can do it yourself. You can have it ready for storms. And as a DIY project, I think, yeah, there's online videos from Lowe's about how to build this yourself. So if you just search it into YouTube, you'll find some videos about how to build yourself some garage door bracing.
There's nothing I like more than the janky looking but effective
For sure.
DIY home improvement.
Yep, yep. So let's talk a little bit about landscaping because I think we've all seen photos like this top one after big storms. High winds can cause branches or entire trees to fall and damage nearby property. So make sure your damaged or diseased trees are trimmed and removed on a regular basis, and that the base of all your trees should be at least their height away from your home. So usually about 40 feet is safe, but it depends on the tree. I'd also recommend replacing gravel and small rocks in your landscaping with mulches. Gravel can be picked up during high winds and can be a pretty nasty projectile that can shred siding and break windows. Also have a way to store or secure all your lawn furniture and outdoor accessories during a storm. So grills, patio furniture, toys, trash cans, all of that stuff could become a projectile. Move it into your garage if you can. I also have personal history with preparing for hurricanes in Florida. I lived there when I was a kid, and my parents used to throw all of our lawn furniture into the swimming pool. So we have pictures of my sister and I sitting on the chairs in the pool, like pretending we're having a tea party at the bottom of the pool. Apparently that's not advised now because it's not great for your pool or for your lawn furniture, but as a last case resort, just know that it worked okay for us.
Nice.
Yeah. Secondary structures are a big one. I think in that first original picture, you saw the carport that had been kind of picked up and moved over and was on top of the house. Carports are like big kites in high winds. So you need to be really aware of structures like this near to or attached to your home. Some carports are wind rated, meaning they've been engineered to withstand high winds, but part of that wind rating is their attachment to the ground. So if you don't anchor your carport to the ground according to the instructions, it's not going to survive the speeds that it's designed for. So make sure you anchor it. The manufacturer will have directions. Read those, do it the way they tell you to. Something to know is that dealers that sell sheds and carports will usually check to see if the building they're selling you meets code in your area. But if you remember that map of the International Residential Code at the beginning, most of the middle of the country only needs to meet 90-mile-an-hour wind speeds. So if you're buying one of these buildings, check in with the person who's selling them to you and see what wind speed they're actually rated for and see if you can get one that's rated for a higher wind speed.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
In Iowa, and I've heard that in other states they're looking at this legislation as well. They just passed a law where you can put as many accessory structures as you want on your property for people who want to put like a tiny house or a
Mhm.
mother-in-law unit or a unit for adult children who need more privacy. So thinking about adding structures and making sure that they're going to fit future conditions seems particularly germane, seems very
Yep.
important.
And attach them to the ground, build a foundation for them. You know, with tiny homes, especially the ones that are just on wheels, I worry about those attachment points and how that whole thing is just going to slide during a big windstorm. So really
That
think
would
about building a foundation with some anchor bolts that go down and really get that thing attached.
It's really an important consideration. And some of these outbuildings that you buy pretty much prefab, I think it's a big temptation to be like, I bought the thing. Now I'm
Mhm.
done. But
Right.
as we always talk about on the channel, buying stuff only gets you so far.
Exactly. Another thing to check in your yard is to make sure that your fencing is in good shape. You don't want any loose fencing boards getting pulled off and becoming projectiles. If you have solar panels, I would make sure that they're really mounted securely. Most solar installers are going to do a good job of this, but if you mounted your own, just go back and check them. Most solar panels are designed to withstand small hail, but you can purchase a temporary hard shell or padded cover to protect them if you're expecting larger hail. Also, if you've got an oil or a propane tank for home fuel, buy a tie down kit for it and also, make sure to anchor it into the ground according to the directions.
I tell you, that is advice that could save you a heck of a lot of trouble. A little bit of work before a disaster, save you a big compounding disaster.
Yep. Just anchor everything you can. Speaking of anchoring, so this is our section for overachievers. For windstorms, most of the damage that occurs is going to be at your roof and openings, so on your home. So if you have that solved, chances are that you're set for bad, but probably not apocalyptic wind events. But you might be interested in pairing that with something like flooding or earthquake resistance. Or maybe you're doing a major renovation to your house anyway, so while your walls are open, you want to upgrade everything you can. In these cases, you should follow the load path all the way down your walls, all the way down, and make sure that every connection from your house to the ground is as solid as it can be. Here's one example that threads in between your floor joists and screws into the studs on the first floor and the second floor. And so it pulls everything together like a sandwich, basically. You also
Yeah,
want to
that's
make
a
sure
lot of connection points.
it's a
That
lot
would
of connection
really
points,
channel
and
the
you're going to have to
force.
rip your drywall off. So
Ugh.
if you're already renovating your kitchen or you're already doing a big renovation to your house, maybe you're putting new insulation in, whatever that looks like, go ahead and do this. But, you don't necessarily need to do it in wind country
I
unless
think
you
people like
want
to know
to.
what your hardcore option is, and this
Yeah.
looks pretty hardcore.
It's very hardcore, but your house is going to be resistant to a lot. You also want to make sure that this connection here is really solid. So you can see this detail here where they've got a clip that's holding it all the way through to the concrete foundation.
Cool.
So if you are interested in this level of protection, consult with an engineer or retrofit professional. They're out there. There are lots of different ties and rods that are manufactured for these purposes. And if you're going to the effort of taking off your drywall, it's worth making sure that you're using the right connections to do the job. So once your home is as prepared as it can be, make sure to stay on top of those maintenance tasks. Perform regular inspections of all the areas that we just discussed and learn how to do some DIY. Being able to repair a few loose shingles or replace like a fascia board after a storm is going to save you a lot of time and headache because odds are the contractors in your area are going to be very busy. So the more stuff you feel confident about doing yourself, the easier you're going to have it after a storm. I would also suggest that you learn to use tools to clear debris. There are chainsaw safety courses that you can find in person and online. And I guarantee that after a storm, you will be the most loved person in your neighborhood if you have a chainsaw and you're willing to help people. Also, make sure that you've got the appropriate PPE to wear when you're working on clearing debris because you want to keep yourself
So,
safe.
talking about that PPE, it's not like we're talking about that you need to wear a hazmat suit, but if you don't have a good pair of work gloves, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
want them. If you don't have good foot protection, you're going to want them. If you're
Keep your
not able
eyes
to
safe.
protect,
You've only got
yeah,
two
your
eyes. Keep them
eyes,
safe.
the last thing you want to do is have to go to the ER
Mhm.
immediately after a wind disaster because you hurt yourself during cleanup.
Right.
When we're trying to recover from these events, keeping all the humans safe is totally critical.
Yeah. I would also recommend having tarps, 2x4s, and cap nails on hand to protect your home from further water damage when and if it does get damaged after a storm. There's proper ways of tarping your roof and windows, and there's lots of guides online that will show you how. So just take a minute and be aware of the right way of doing that and have the materials on hand to protect your home because there's so much water damage that can happen after a storm that's going to make cleanup even harder that getting a tarp on it right away is worthwhile.
That's a really good point. And these are not expensive materials to have in storage.
Mm-hmm.
But right after a storm, they're extremely hard to find. The
Yeah.
demand right after a storm is going to clean out any local supply.
So that's it. That's my presentation on wind and hail. Thank you so much for having me back, Emily.
Ash, I feel like you gave us a lot of really practical, actionable information. There are a great combo of approachable, accessible DIY ideas here that can keep your roof from blowing off, always desirable, and like major retrofits to think about if you're considering a big job or a professional job. And I really like how many of these suggestions tie into an all hazards approach. We
Mhm.
know with the home insurance market that this wind and storm damage is the big factor that they're worried about in the northern Midwest. So I really appreciate having this information that's useful for my region. And as we look at that hurricane track shift, as we're looking at hurricane force winds well inland in the southeast and the northeast, I think this is information that a lot of us can use. So I especially appreciate your putting it together when you don't have a local threat from this kind of wind. Thank you for doing this research for us.
No problem. You never know when a windstorm will pop up around here, but hopefully, knock on wood, not anytime soon. We've got fire to worry about. We've got other stuff,
Yeah,
but
you all have enough to worry about over
we
by
do.
Boise.
We
Well,
do.
thank you so much. And thank you for helping us get ready.
Yep. Thank you.
Folks, thanks for watching, and thanks to everyone in the AR community who keeps this channel going. The donors, the volunteers, people spreading the word online, and especially everyone doing the work on the ground. Financially, AR is a donor-supported organization. We don't take grant funding, and I want you to know your support really matters. If you'd like to donate, please check out the link on our website, www.americanresiliency.org, or on the About page of our YouTube channel. I'll look forward to talking with you again soon.